Hi, we are still exploring the evidence for the continental drift theory. And the second evidence is fossils. Okay, so we find that there are remains of ancient living creatures that can be found in the different parts of the continents that we have now. Modern day Africa, modern day South America, India, Antarctica, island of Madagascar, and Australia. Okay? And when we look at the fossil that are found in these continents, we see a pattern. Okay? For example, we have this one. This is the fossil called Mysosaurus. And the Mysosaurus is a freshwater reptile, and it can only be found on the tip of South Africa and the tip of South America. The tip of Africa and the tip of South America. And they kind of align with what was proposed by the jigsaw fit of the continents. And then another fossil is this Sinognathus, which is also a reptile-like uh, animal, and its fossils are found somewhere in the middle of South America and also in the middle of Africa. And again, when we refer back to what the jigsaw fit suggests to us, we find that these are areas that were once connected when the Pangaea supercontinent was still in existence. If we look at the Lystrosaurus, which is another Triassic land reptile, we find its remains all over Africa, Madagascar, India, and Antarctica. And finally, we have this fern that's called Glossopteris. It's found in South America, Africa, Madagascar, India, Antarctica, and Australia in one stretch. Okay? So what that says is that it's a compelling evidence that these were once connected together. Because why would you have those fossils in different continents? Okay? Say for example, you take the the other stand, which is to say that the continents were there and the continents did not move. If the continents did not move, then how come you find Mysosaurus in this part of South America and in this part of South Africa and not anywhere else in the world? Right? That would be that would be impossible to explain. You can explain it in two ways, but all of those two ways are quite not probable. So the first way that you can explain it is maybe this is South America, this is South Africa. There was once an animal that was living here, right? That's the Mysosaurus, and maybe they swam across the ocean, and then therefore they ended up here, and that's why now you find fossils of the Mysosaurus here, and you find fossils of the Mysosaurus here. But again, that is kind of very impossible because number one, this Mysosaurus is a freshwater reptile. So meaning you could not assume that these animals simply just swam to these parts. And even with that explanation, if they swam to this part, why didn't they swim here? Right? Because if they can swim large distances, then why couldn't they swim to Antarctica? Why couldn't they swim towards India? Why couldn't they swim towards the northern part of uh, America? Why specifically in South America? So you see that that theory that the animals simply just scattered through natural ways, that is not possible. Another explanation could be that maybe nature simply evolved. You know, the continents were like this. There was an animal here, we call it animal one, an animal here, we call it animal two, and through natural selection, they just simply evolved and became the Mysosaurus here, and then became Mysosaurus here. So kind of like spontaneous evolution, where this evolved into Mysosaurus, this another animal also evolved into another, I don't know, variant of Mysosaurus, and therefore now you see Mysosaurus here and here. Well, that is kind of very improbable because you see, evolution is very sensitive to environmental inputs. Okay, the fact that this South Africa, and South America have different climates, or have are in different locations of the world, they would influence evolution differently. Okay, to understand this better, take for example the polar bear and the brown bear. Right, both of these are bears, so they have the common ancestor. But the polar bear develops white fur, the brown bear develops brown fur, and that's because, well, the polar bear lives in the snow, in the ice, and therefore it would be better for them to develop white fur so that they can camouflage. They will not be seen by predators, and they can sneak up on their prey so they can live better. For brown bears, they are living in the woods, so therefore in the woods the dominant color is the barks of the trees, the dead leaves, and so it's brown. So you see, even with the same animal, if you put them into different environmental location, they would evolve, they would diverge in terms of evolution. So for you to say that maybe there's just an animal that spontaneously evolved into Mesosaurus and another animal that spontaneously evolved into Mesosaurus, that's very, very, very impossible. It's like winning the grand prize of the lotto 7 times in a row in 1 week, right? It's impossible enough to win the lotto once. How much more if it's 7 days in a week in consecutive manner? So again, you could only explain this in two ways. One, to assert that maybe these animals swam across the ocean, but again, if they swam across the ocean and found themselves there, why didn't they swim here? Why didn't they swim on the other islands? Why only on those two locations? Okay. Second, you could not say that they simply evolved. A Mesosaurus simply evolved out of here, and a Mesosaurus simply evolved out of here, because again, evolution is a very sensitive environment driven evolution. Evolution is a sensitive environment driven process that any small change in the environment would cause the animal to kind of develop a different evolutionary set of features and therefore become different. Again, a case for that is the brown bear and the polar bear. Both of them are bears, but they develop differently because they are in different locations. So to say that an animal simply evolved to become Mesosaurus here and an animal simply evolved to become Mesosaurus here, that's very improbable. It's not impossible, but the degree of confidence to say that that never happens is very, 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 very high. This is kind of similar to why we think that human beings evolved out of Africa. There was a theory before that maybe there was spontaneous evolution. Maybe in Asia there were some apes that became human beings, and in Africa there were some apes that became human beings, and in Europe there were some apes that became human beings. But again, it's very, very, very highly unlikely. It's most likely that we evolved from one location because again, evolution is sensitive to environmental inputs, and then from there we spread across the world. Okay, so the only way that you can explain this is if you would that they were these parts of the two continents were really once. They were living in the same area. They died here because that's basically the same area. And then later the continents drifted, and that's why you can see you can dig up fossils here of the Mesosaurus and also fossils here of the Mesosaurus. Okay. Now another thing that is often overlooked when discussing fossils or evidences is that the power of corroborating evidence, right? Because again, like take for example a case in court, right? If you have one witness that says, I saw this man kill another person, and then another witness would say, I saw also the same man kill this same person. You have two witnesses, right? You have two evidence. You have two witnesses, and you might say, yeah, well, that would make the case stronger. Well, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that yes, you have two witnesses, but what would be better if their stories kind of corroborate, meaning if their stories are the same, right? Because if witness A would say, I saw that man, he was wearing yellow shirt, and then he entered into that room where the murder happened, and you know, like that. And then another witness would say, yeah, I saw the same man, but he was wearing blue. See? So all of a sudden, those two conflicting stories would now make that evidence weaker, right? So what's my point? My point is, when we propose the evidence for continental drift theory, we have already proposed the first one, which is the jigsaw fit of the continents, right? And then now we are adding fossils, right? Distribution of fossils in the continents. Now, again, this is like witness number 1 and witness number 2, right? More witnesses, the better. But what is even better than more witnesses is if they corroborate, if their stories fit together, okay? And in this case, they do, because if you think about it, it's not that Mesosaurus is found in South America and found in Africa, but they are found precisely at areas that were proposed to be connected when we invoke the jigsaw fit of the continents, right? So what I'm trying to say is, if we found Mesosaurus, this is South America and this is Africa. If we found Mesosaurus here, right? And then we found Mesosaurus here, right? Then that would not be good, because according to the jigsaw fit of the continents, this coastline should be connected with that coastline, right? So if this coastline should be connected to that coastline, and then when you look at the fossils of Mesosaurus found here, and it's also found here, that makes the evidence weaker, because you would then ask the question, why wouldn't we find the fossils in here, in between? I mean, it's not like the animals teleported from here and then teleported there, right? It must be a continuous line. So you see, the locations of the fossils not only present to you a strong evidence that these two were connected, but they would also corroborate, right, what jigsaw fit of the continents would tell us, because the jigsaw fit of the continents tell us that this coastline would be connected to that coastline, and therefore, when we find the Mesosaurus fossil here and Mesosaurus fossils here, guess what? When we fit them, they are in the same area, adjacent area. Okay? So you see, the fossils not only present a whole new independent line of evidence that these continents were connected, but they confirm, they corroborate, they kind of support what the edges of the continents tell us. Okay? So a lot of times, when you just simply memorize things like, okay, the evidence is jigsaw fit of fossils and jigsaw fit of the continents and then the distribution of fossils. A lot of times, it becomes this. It's not as awesome as it is, because you don't realize that it's not just fossils. The locations of the fossils not only tell you that these were connected, but they are precisely located in areas that would have been connected together as predicted if you believe in the jigsaw fit of the continent. So the story put forward by the jigsaw fit of the continent is corroborated by the fossil distribution evidence.